I know we have such a negative association with mythology, but I mean it in the way that it's highly symbolic, and the ancients used it symbolically, right? And that's so important that it's not meant to be understood. Even the narratives we find, um, it's not meant to be like a historical recording, like how we read historical biographies. It's never meant to function that way anyway. It's highly symbolic. The ancients would use it symbolically to reference, to draw on that power from those deities. So when we're reading that, we have to keep that in mind that when we're talking about the ancient Egyptians, it's not a bio, it's not a biography. It's definitely not a Western biography, right? And that's so different from what we have with Jesus. The narrative of Jesus, the gospels are intended to be a historical recording. They are saying, hey, this actually happened this way, this time with these people. So they want you to understand that these are actual things that took place. And that's two different dynamics.
Well, thank you for watching another episode of the Jew 3 Project podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lisa Fields, the founder of the Jew 3 Project, and I'm so excited to have someone who has been a part of the Jew 3 Project podcast before, Erika Brown, soon to be Dr. Erika Brown. I'm so excited for her. But welcome, Erika.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm so excited. I love Jude 3.
Yes, I'm glad to have you on the podcast again. For those who didn't see your previous episode, just tell us, our audience, a little bit about who you are.
Um, well, I do a lot of I'm Erica, by the way, sorry, from Just So You Know. And I do a lot with introducing biblical archaeology to Christians to help them with understanding the world, the culture, and history of the Bible. And just recently released videos where I'm talking about the difference between Jesus and Horus narrative, but specifically looking at the archaeological data relating to Horus.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about because I saw the Just So You Know video on that, and I thought you did a great job
Oh,
explaining
thank
that.
you.
Uh,
Thank you.
just tell our audience a little bit about the debate, why this is a thing between Jesus and Horus, probably starting off with who is Horus.
Yeah, so, if anybody's familiar with the world of social media, they love to get on there and debunk Christian things, whatever. And one of the popular things they like to use is they like to say that the narrative of Jesus Christ, as told in the Bible, is a retelling of the ancient Egyptian god Horus. Um, and it's crazy because my work began with I heard it so often. I know you've heard it too, Lisa. It's like they'll say it a lot, and so I heard it so often, I thought maybe there was some legitimacy to it. So I was like, let me look into it. Maybe it's that close. And that's where my research began. Just specifically looking at the artifacts that talk about Horus. Um, and like I said in my video, Horus is not, we don't have one source like we do with Jesus in the Bible. His narratives, various parts, are on different artifacts, different objects, different spaces across ancient Egypt. So it's been looking at those different spaces, those different artifacts, just to kind of get a clear picture of what ancient Egyptians thought about Horus, and then take that and compare what we know about the narrative of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super helpful. So, what do we know about Horus?
So what we do know about Horus is, and mostly what I focused on was his conception and birth, and then his death and resurrection. In terms of his conception, what we do know is that his mother Isis, who was not a virgin, by the way, who was married to her husband, Osiris. She, and I always, it gets a little tricky because ancient Egyptians were a little bit more free with their language about the process of conception. She magically restores, he's murdered by his brother Seth, by the way, and chopped up into pieces. And she puts him back together. She only magically restores his male part, and she engages in activity with his male part, and that's how she gets pregnant with Horus. Right? That's the most widely accepted narrative of Horus's conception. Um, And then with his birth, we know that Isis, his mother, who was on the run from Seth, ends up in this marsh area, ends up delivering him in the marsh area, which is like a really, reeds and creek and water and things like that, bushes, excuse me. So that's how he's born. That's Horus's conception and birth. And then when we look at his death, and actually I kind of touched on this a little bit. There's one account where he's a child and he gets bit by a scorpion, and there's really a lot of debate between scholars as to whether or not he actually dies or if he gets really, really sick. But either way, if he dies or he gets really sick, he's revived by Isis. And that's really it when it comes to death, because for the most part, he's not known for dying. He is a eternal deity who does not die, which is why pharaohs typically like to be, that's why pharaohs were associated with Horus. They were the earthly manifestation of Horus on earth. And then when they died, then they would go into the realm of Osiris. So he was supposed to be an eternal conqueror, just amazing warrior. So that's Horus's death and resurrection. If you want to, I do huge air quotes because it's like, is it like a resurrection or not? So that's what we know about Horus when it comes to his conception and birth and death and resurrection.
Why do you think Christianity or Jesus has been associated with him so much?
The only thing I can think of is the sun aspect. Now, I will say imagery wise, we do have early imagery of Isis holding little Horus or baby Horus. And, later on, especially in Western depictions, we get that depiction of Mary holding a baby Jesus or young Jesus. I think that imagery is so similar, and that is something that someone latched onto. And I mean, really just latched on to just that. Sure, there's a similarity in that imagery. But even then, I was like, that imagery of Jesus and Mary, that's later. That's imagery that came up in Western European imagery. So it's like, to say that that's something that was stolen just because of that imagery, it's a hard reach. That's the only thing I can see, because other than that, Lisa, there's no similarities. Like, I don't see it. I don't know how they even got there. Yeah.
This is and I want to just talk about kind of your specialty in archaeology. Like, you've done excavations in Egypt. So we're not talking to somebody who is not familiar with Egyptian the Egyptian world. Like, you've done excavations in archaeology. And so I want that to be noted as we're having this conversation, because you're somebody who knows what you're talking about. You're not just like someone who is like reading through articles on the internet. Like, so, I think it's important for people to know that. What other things about just Egyptian mythology should we be thinking about in the backdrop as we think about Christianity or correlations that you think would be helpful for our audience?
Another important thing is the use of, I know we have such a negative association with mythology, but I mean it in the way that it's highly symbolic, and the ancients used it symbolically, right? And that's so important, that it's not meant to be understood. Even the narratives we find, it's not meant to be like a historical recording, like how we read historical biographies. It's never meant to function that way anyway. It's highly symbolic. The ancients would use it symbolically to reference, to draw on that power from those deities. So when we're reading that, we have to keep that in mind, that when we're talking about the ancient Egyptians, it's not a bio. It's not a biography. It's definitely not a Western biography, right? And that's so different from what we have with Jesus. The narrative of Jesus, the Gospels are intended to be a historical recording. They are saying, hey, this actually happened this way, this time with these people. So they want you to understand that these are actual things that took place. And that's two different dynamics. That's like putting that pressure. We try and teach people about context, literary context, cultural context. And this is that same when we deal with historical and ancient culture, which is one of my one of my passions is we can't work with ancient, and this comes with the Bible too, any type of ancient information, ancient literature, ancient data, we cannot make them operate through our modern Western perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is how they use it. This is how they did it. We have to understand it within that frame.
Mm-hmm.
So even if there were similarities, which there aren't, we would have to understand that those recordings of Horus, it wasn't saying that this is an actual thing. You use this when Isis restores him from the scorpion. It's a magical formula, a magical spell for restoration and protection. So I recite this event so that that magic or that restoration and that power can happen to my child or person. And I think that's the major, major difference when it comes to just the ancient world. And I'm always trying to stress that to people. We've got to do it within the context of how they saw it. And then we draw from there, just like we teach with Bible study and other time. Context, context, context.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as even as you were talking, I think the one of the appeals that people, especially in our context of African Americans, the appeal to say this came first, this story was
Mm-hmm.
stolen, that they copied us to make a faith or a religion,
Yeah,
gives us some kind of superiority. Like, so I talk about in my book about five percenters and Nation of Gods and Earth, and referring to humans, referring to black people as God. And one of the reasons it's appealing is because we felt so dehumanized that we
yeah,
wanted to give ourselves identity and affirmation. So it's like,
yeah,
you said I was dehuman, I'm less than human. So now my ideology is I'm saying I'm God. And the solution for someone giving you a false identity is not to adopt another false identity.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yes, you dehumanize me, but then I can't go pick up another false identity and say I'm God. Like, you don't fight
Right,
lies with lies.
right,
And so I
right.
think there's this aspect of saying, hey, you dehumanized my beliefs or who I am as a person. I need
Yeah,
to look into and find something to attach myself to that actually says, oh, you actually stole what you believe from me.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. And you know what? I always try to show grace when I'm dealing with African American Christians, and also when I'm dealing with spaces where it's PWI. I'm like, yes, they're handling it wrong, but they're also grasping for an identity and a culture that was stripped from them,
mm-hmm,
stripped from us, excuse me, that was stripped from us. So we have to show grace in that. And even then, I say it's okay to even learn about Horus. I don't even have a problem with that because it's beauty in understanding the world of the ancient world. But I think sometimes we don't know, especially African Americans, we don't know to, hey, just embrace the beauty of it, embrace the culture of it, learn from that and appreciate that. But that doesn't mean we take that. That doesn't mean it's ours.
mm-hmm.
And learning that difference, walking that fine line of appreciation, like we would do with art or any other thing. Appreciating the history, the beauty, and what it meant, and how people lived based on that. But that doesn't mean that that it's ours. We take it for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because there is this thing for our culture, looking at Horus, Cometicism, Egyptology,
Yeah,
wanting to connect with something, um, that that helps affirm us as humanity. What other things about Egyptology or understanding, like how the ancient how ancient Egypt was thinking about faith, that we should be understanding that would be helpful for our audience?
yeah. So I started learning hieroglyphs this past semester, and that's a whole. Oh
Oh,
my
you
gosh.
you that's
Um,
a skill.
oh my gosh.
Kudos to you.
Listen,
That's amazing.
I because I've been handling a lot of data, and I don't like people translating for me all the time. So I'm really like trying to get where I can translate myself.
That's
But
awesome. Fantastic.
you you learn so much about a culture through their language.
Hmm.
And I said it earlier a little bit about the symbolism, but Um, there's a fluidity, and in ancient Egypt, religion and faith and the world and regular life is so intertwined.
Hmm.
It's so there's no dividing it. I think, especially us American Christians, separation of church and state. We live on that, And to realize that within the ancient world, especially in Egypt, more so than from what I've seen, more so than anybody else, there is no separation.
Mm-hmm.
There is no life and what we believe about our deities. They're all connected. There's no separation. So even then, it's even hard to deal with the artifacts and the data and try and have this thing where we're separating their faith and their religion with their agriculture or their marriage or the stars. Like, it's so intertwined. And I think that's important too, to this is their culture, this is their world. So their deities, that's why I say I hate mythology, because we have such a negative view of that word, that term, because it means fake and untrue. Um, but the Egyptians didn't see it like that. It's not like, oh, this made up God is magical. The power or the manifestation of this particular part of nature is manifested through this deity. So it's like, it's so connected. And I didn't even realize it. I knew it to an extent, but the more I've looked at their language, even the hieroglyphs, how they use the hieroglyphs and how you see nature is connected in the words and how they form words. And, it's beautiful. That's what's been most interesting, at least this past semester. We'll see how it goes when I take my when I do the next semester of hieroglyphs.
I love how you said it's beautiful. Um, One of the reasons is because there is a demonization of
Yeah,
anything African spiritual, right?
yeah,
So we don't talk about Zeus the same way we talk about African spirituality, right?
that part.
When we
Yeah,
talk about Greek mythology, we don't necessarily demonize. We can watch
mhm,
Hercules, but anytime anything comes up that's African gods,
yeah,
it's always demonic in a way that I don't know Hercules was defined. Like when we were all little kids, we all watched Hercules, the little
yeah. We
cartoon,
did.
and nobody
Yeah,
was
we
like,
did.
"Oh, that's demonic," you know.
No,
Um, but when it
and
comes,
those deities was doing some really janky stuff, by the way. But
yeah,
anyway, we
yeah,
don't.
Zeus,
It's
Hercules, we don't talk about it in the same way as we do
mm-mm,
African spiritualism, and both of
no.
them I wouldn't deem are true faiths that we should ascribe to. But what I'm saying is
Mhm.
there is a way in which we observe one and don't connect it to demons, and we
Yeah.
automatically do. And so that is something that it's a conversation. I haven't seen the movie Sinners, but I know that
Me neither. I'm
I
trying to
haven't
get there.
I haven't seen it yet, mostly because they
Yeah.
said it was a horror movie and I'm trying to stay away from horror movies, not because
Same.
anything
Same.
demonic, but I just don't like to be scared. Like I
I'm
don't
a
want to
big
pay to
chicken. Yeah.
I don't want to pay to be scared. So it has nothing to do with
Yeah.
a spiritual thing. I just don't want to pay to be scared. Um
Same.
so that's that. But what the conversation has been around is I think it was some African spirituality things in there. And so I my thought is I wonder what ways do we talk about European mythology that we don't talk about African theology. And I saw people that were a part of like a deconstruction movement with in the black church community
Yeah.
venting about the ways they see black Christians talking about it. And I was trying to listen and I was like, okay, I think one of the things that the pain point is like why is everything African automatically demonized in a way we don't talk about other cultures? And so I was
Right.
like, okay, let's be sensitive to that we're missing it.
Mm.
And so when you said it's beautiful, I see a level of a balance in which you could talk about something. You're not saying I want to adopt Egyptology,
No. No. Right. Right.
but you're saying the way of the integration was beautiful because it was a connection between it's not just it's an interconnection of everything. And
Yeah.
it's the outworkings of that you're observing a level of beauty in that can affirm like that piece and can build a bridge in communication, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I love history anyway, so all that stuff is just beautiful to see how people lived, how people are trying to deal with life, how people are trying to navigate that.
Hmm.
I'm always it's just fascinating. And so yeah, I see the beauty in it. The depictions, you know, the good thing about archaeology, we're looking at visuals. We're looking at one of the narratives of Horus's conception. It's all a visual inscription in the tomb. So you get to see how the beautiful details and the beautiful colors and how they have, even sometimes Isis is presented as a kite, a bird. And I was like, how creative, how beautiful to use this symbolism and depict her that way. I love it. And I have had problems with people when I'm talking to Christians and I'm like, oh, I love it. It's so beautiful. And they're like, you're not scared? You're not scared of getting caught up in that? And I'm like, no, I know in whom I believed. No, Jesus is going to reign forever. Um, I just think that we can appreciate how other cultures moved, and that better equips us to help them anyway. If I learn about religions that wrap nature in that, I can help them see the beauty of nature in following Jesus Christ and how the heavens are telling of him. We can use that language. We can build on those things, and even be creative in ourselves. Sometimes we miss the beauty of God because we're only looking at things through this one prism,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy because the Bible is birthed from an ancient Near Eastern world. So how cool to get a visual and learn about things through the prism of the ancient Near East and then see the Bible through the prism of the ancient Near Eastern world. So it's all beautiful and I'm always impressed. Always impressed and over just in awe.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. It's helpful. Reminds me of Paul and Mars Hill pointing to the tomb of the unknown God. That
Yeah.
he understood what they believed, and he didn't go there and say, "Oh, y'all worshiping demons. Let me tell you about
Right.
Jesus." He's like affirmed, like the what y'all are doing. The pursuit is a good pursuit, but let me direct the
Mhm.
pursuit. Let me direct your pursuit in the right direction because your pursuit is
Right.
good. So when I think about even ancient Near Eastern world and them trying to make sense of different things that are happening and ascribing gods to it, like you see this a lot with mythology. There's a god over water. There's a god over the sun. They're trying to make sense of what's happening, some of the calamities, and they say somebody's in charge of this regent. Like this,
Yep.
somebody's in charge of the water, somebody's in charge of the sun. So I'm trying to make sense with the what's happening with the earth by giving a deity control, by seeing a deity as having control of this. So when
Yep.
there's
Yep.
calamity, I know who to contact. So it is a sense of making sense of, it's a pursuit of the problem of evil in the world. Like, the problem of evil is not just about why do good things happen to bad people. It's like what's happening in the earth. Like,
Yeah.
and we don't think about the earth the way I think the ancient world thought about the earth. It
We don't have
like,
to.
yeah, we're not
Mm.
thinking about outside of global warming and climate change, but not even, a lot of people aren't even into that. So
Right.
like we're not thinking about the earth the way they did and how it was
Mm.
so deeply interconnected. So when you think about all of that, I think it gives you another level of kind of processing of how they were thinking about it, which doesn't make it seem so weird.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it actually, like, okay, I see what you were trying to do. I see the
Yeah.
pursuit. I would
Yeah.
I would I would say that God is in control over everything, but they had like these tiers of gods in a
Yep.
sense that would
Yep.
kind of be under the supreme rule of the of other gods.
Yeah. And you know what? It also helps us understanding when the Israelites come out of Egypt. It really puts a perspective of how hard this must have been to go from all of these deities who cover all of these different things to Yahweh
Mm,
being that's it. Like I cannot imagine the transition. I think sometimes we're a little tough on them because we on the other side of it. Jesus has risen. We know, so we on the other side. We know there's one. But if you have been in a culture where there are multiple deities for different things, you got the God for war, the God for health, the God for marriage, the God for agriculture, all those things. And then you bring me out of that environment and say, nope, just one. And also, by the way, you don't dress me, and I don't have a body, and I don't have a wife, and I don't have all these things. I the first time I really thought about that, I said these poor Israelites was like probably like, what? How can one deity, how can Yahweh just be in charge of all of these things? And so again, putting on that ancient Near Eastern prism, we see how Moses has got to, oh Lord, he has got to walk these babies through this whole thing, and it takes them a while to get it right. And
Mm-hmm.
we learn that from learning about ancient Egyptian religion. We learn that from learning about ancient Babylonian and Mesopotamia, all of those different religions. We learn that, and again, it adds beauty to the Bible to me, because now I understand, for one, God's grace to walk them through that. He didn't have to be so gracious and walk them through this to help slowly change their mind and perspective, but he did. Um, the sacrificial system, and taking that and learning how other ancient Near Eastern cultures were doing sacrifices, and how God took that to teach the Israelites the truth about who he is and how that works. It's, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
And you learn that, especially when we're dealing with ancient Egyptian culture, you learn that a lot, because there's a lot of interaction with Israel and Egypt, with everyone in the ancient Near East in general. But there's a lot of interaction with the people of ancient Israel and Egypt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what as you were saying that, like the thought sparked, like it really takes it to another level of why the first commandment is the first commandment.
Yes.
Like it makes
Yeah.
sense because they're
He
coming.
probably had to park right there.
Like, yeah,
Like,
just that one
the Lord your God is
alone.
one.
Yeah, like
Like,
what?
one?
What?
The math on math on
Yeah,
that
that's not what
one.
I've grown up hearing, right? So I
Yeah.
grew up when I obviously I'm born into I'm a PK, born into a Christian home. So what I believe makes sense to me because it's all I've ever heard.
Right.
All
Yeah.
they ever heard, flip it, all they had ever heard was that.
Yeah. They helped build the temples. They helped build all those things. That's all they've ever heard. That's the system they know. That's it. Because, let me tell you something. Them ancient Egyptians, especially the royalty and the upper class, they going to build some temples and some altars, child. They was just building them. You just get them built.
Yes.
And like, we're just going to put some here. We're going to put some there. So the people who are building these things, this is what they know. We know that this is dedicated to the god Best. This is dedicated to the god Horus. Even, they found an ancient temple in Sinai dedicated to Hathor, where there's imagery of calves and cows, which, remember when they're at the mountain and they make the golden calf, it's
Mm-hmm.
like they're not too far from that area. So it's like, it's what they know.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't pull the calf out of their brain. They're like, this is what you do. We're here. We're near this temple. We're near this worship system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, they are struggling.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord your God is one, and you shall worship no other God but me. What? What are we doing?
Yeah. What's even interesting is because if I'm thinking about the timeline, right, and um, they make the calf before they're even given the commandment, right?
Yeah.
Am I getting
Yeah.
the timeline right?
Yeah. No, that's right. He hadn't come down yet. He
Yeah.
broke him when he came down. He was big mad. Yeah.
Yeah. So they hadn't even got the commandment yet. They're still trying to make sense of their
Yeah.
experience coming out. So that I think that just gives you saying that, I think it just, you think about the text a little bit more, and how, like,
Yeah.
putting yourself in their shoes, coming out, thinking about what we're supposed to do, trying to
Yeah.
evaluate new ways of thinking, all of that is, I mean, you've seen the plagues, you've seen what God could do compared to Egyptian gods.
Yeah.
But I also think about me and myself. I've seen what God can do, and then have
That
moments
part. Mhm.
where I'm going back and doing what I
Yeah.
think to to help the situation best. And so
right? It's a continual. That's why we say the Bible's consistent all the way through. It's a continual story of grace. Ours may not be golden calves, but it may be this whatever thing I tend to go back to, even though the Bible says, "Hey, you don't have to do this. Jesus, take my yoke upon me, my burden's light." Right?
yeah.
But you're like, no, no, no. I'm going to keep going. I want to go back to the one thing because I know it. And it's just like the Israelites. And again, it's about showing grace. It's about God's consistency, His provision. But you see it, we get that from diving into their world and how they're navigating that world. Like you don't get to see the beauty of God's grace and provision till you understand how these people had to walk through it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just talking about it culturally, how they had to walk through the culture to get to the other side to serve Yahweh the way He has told them to do it. I'm telling you, man, it's awesome.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It is. It is. I want to just celebrate you for getting your PhD in archaeology as a Black woman, uh, because like the amount of people that need your context, um, to even be able to understand archaeology, like
Yeah.
you are valuable and important, and I mean I salute you for getting your PhD in archaeology. I
Oh my
definitely
God,
couldn't do
thank
it.
you.
It takes a very, I think, special calling to do that, to commit to that. And I can't wait to see all the people that will be helped and the Bible will come alive in new ways because you
Yeah.
made the sacrifice. I know it's time consuming. I know, like, it seems like it's never going to be over. You already did
It's
your.
never.
I mean, I remember connecting with you. I think you sent an email to me years ago,
Yeah.
and I completely was like, I need to connect with her. And then I think it was, I forgot about the email because, gosh, I just, my mind, sometimes I forget. And then Yana, I think it was, it brought you back to my attention. She was like, I met this woman through, I think, Jennifer Lucy Tyler. She was like,
Yeah.
she studies archaeology. I was like, Lisa would love to know her. And I was like, I think she emailed me. And then we got you on the podcast. But I'm so excited. I think you had just started your PhD program when you were on the
Yeah.
podcast last time, and now you're about to
Yeah.
be ABD, all but dissertation.
ABD. I know. My husband was like, "Are you gonna put ABD down?" I was like, "No, no, I'm not gonna put
Yeah,
ABD
it's gonna be great. I'm excited,
down." Yeah.
like, for you to cross that finish line and get it. What is your dissertation gonna be on?
You know, my I'm always okay. So my master's thesis was on the sexual practices of ancient Israelite culture during the Iron Age,
Mm,
and
I we
yeah, I know
we
everybody's
should
like,
have had a conversation about that.
I know everybody's like, what? And so my school, when they brought me on, wanted me to explore that topic archaeologically, because you hear people talk about it from the text, but we never really talk about it within the archaeological context. Um, but I don't know because the data is so, when archaeology, we're data driven. It's data, data, data. And so even in my preliminary research, it's been hard finding the data.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'm leaning that way. I know they want me to because it's different most of the time, especially within Christian researchers. They don't talk about sexual practices, sexual activities. It's just now becoming culturally okay to talk about those things. So they kind of want to stay in that direction. But we'll see. The data,
So, what did
we'll
you
see.
discover when you did your master's about the sexual practice of
Um, so when there is a structure, we call it the Israelite house, or the four-room house or the pillared house. It's specifically tied to ancient Israel. It's a specific structure that's only around when the ancient Israelites take the land. It's it's a specific design. It's a specific layout, and we only see it in ancient Israel. We only see it when they have the land, and it disappears after the exile.
mm,
Right, so it's a specific marker. And so I looked at how sexual practices would have taken place within that structure based on how they were using that space. Well, we already know about that space. And so I really looked at how they were engaging in sexual practices within that space and how that coincided with their practices of purity. So that's really what my thesis was about, how it coincided with maintaining purity and sexual compartmentalization. I got to coin a term. I was so excited. But sexual compartmentalization within the four-room house, within the ancient Israelite house, which is also another marker of their distinct view of sex. When you look at other ancient Near Eastern documents and how they talk about sexual practices, sexual anything, the Bible is exclusively euphemistic. There are no direct terms that talk about sex in the Bible, no direct terms about sexual body parts. They only use euphemisms. And that's fascinating because everybody else they'll use euphemisms, but they use other terms. They have terms. So my thesis talked about how the use of space to engage in sex within that space fits within the biblical context and the archaeological data.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
It was fascinating. And you know what? I got into it. I wasn't even we read a lot about the structure. Oh my gosh, if you ever talk to an archaeology person, ask them about the four-room house, they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, we talk about it all the time." Um and at first I was just being a bit of a brat, being funny. Well, what do they do this activity, But the more I researched, I realized that no one had explored that topic, no one had talked about it, no one had identified it, and that's how it became my topic.
That's awesome. How many Black people are in archaeology, specifically like the Christian archaeological space?
So we have another person in our program now, Chris Jenkins. Fascinating. He primarily focuses on Egypt, by the way. He's coming out of Yale. He's awesome. Um, so we have Chris. I know about five others, and he and I are the only ones that I know are Christian. For a long time before he came into the program, I was the only one that I knew was a Christian. But I'm gonna wing it. Say it's about a good 10 of us
In the
in the
Christian,
United States that are black, but maybe two Christian,
wow,
two an apostle. So 10 in the United States.
10 archaeologists, Black
Black
archaeologists.
archaeologists, yeah. For this specific, for ancient Near Eastern archaeology. Now, there are people who do African American archaeology. That look at slavery, um, that area of archaeology. But we're not connected. I don't do African American archaeology, which I have caught flack for being a sellout, not doing that, but it's fine. But there are a lot of African American archaeologists, but like I said, about 10 of us that do ancient Near Eastern or biblical archaeology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're in that number, and I look forward to all the work you'll produce and the books that you
Yeah.
will contribute to and the books you'll write. I think it's amazing. How can people watch because you do a YouTube series on this
Yeah.
archaeology?
Yes. So my YouTube channel is Just So You Know by ER Brown or Erika Brown. And that's really where I'm at. I mostly do my long form there because I want to take the time to really thoroughly explain it. I try and do short form on Instagram and TikTok, but I don't want to popcorn it. I
Hmm.
don't want to continue the trend of misinformation and not taking the time to really deal with the data. So I always encourage people to check out my YouTube channel, Just So You Know, by ER Brown. And that's where I'm at, talking about biblical archaeology. And I'm loving every minute of it.
Is there anything else you want to say about Horus that you think our audience should know?
No, that's just it. It's not the same. And if anybody tell you that they're lazy, they're not even research, like it's just not even close. But that's really it. I'm telling you, I was so disappointed with how close it was not. I could not. I felt bad. I was like, I just knew it was going to be so tight. It's not even a little bit. Two different figures. So
Yeah.
if people say that, take heart. A lot of the stuff with archaeology, because it's not a moneymaker, a lot of the research and information is free online. You can go to websites like Google Scholar or Academia and type in these things and get a lot of this information for free. So I also tell people that it's not even exclusive information. It's there. And also I don't mind people. I've had a number of people hit me up and ask me for more information. I'm always glad to do that as well.
Yeah, what resources? And notice she said people, she said Google Scholar and not Google. It's a difference. Google
Yes,
Scholar is a
Google
part of Scholar.
Scholar.
Google Scholar is academic material. You type in
Yes.
Google and just Horus and Jesus, you might get false information, but Google Scholar is going to give you
Yeah.
academic information. And so, any books that you would suggest they read, or is it just
Um, there are a couple of like dictionary. I meant to put it up, prepare. Most of them are guides, but there is the Complete Gods and Goddesses of Ancient Egypt. It's very reader friendly. And it gives you details about Horus, the different manifestations of Horus, but really it gives you all of the deities, like
Mhm.
little short blurbs. It's a great resource if you're wanting to know specifically about ancient Egyptian gods, at least a good starter.
And what is it
And
called
as I
again?
understand, it's called the Complete Gods and Goddesses of Ancient Egypt.
Okay, is who is the
Yeah.
editor?
It's Richard Wilkinson
Okay, cool.
is what I have here.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good intro, and it should be a lot of references to help you if you want to dive deeper. It's great for that.
Okay.
It's got beautiful pictures too of the different imagery we get from different sites and different artifacts as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Erica. It's been a joy to have you on the podcast again. We'll have to have you on
Yeah,
again to talk about some other stuff. But
yeah.
keep on keeping on. You almost there. So
Thank you. Thanks for having me for real, man. I love Jude 3. I love everything y'all doing. Like I've been for a long time, so it's always loving it.
yeah, thank you. Well, thank y'all for watching another episode of the Jude 3 Project podcast. As always, you can catch all of our podcasts wherever you stream your podcasts or on our YouTube channel. Remember to get my book, When Faith Disappoints, wherever books are sold. And we could not do what we do without generous support from people like you. So consider becoming a monthly partner or giving one time at g3project.org, hitting that donate tab. There's an address uh, to mail your gift in if you want to do it by mail, or you could give online. We have resources on our websites, curriculum, online courses, all the things. Remember, here at the G3 Project, we're helping you to know what you believe and why you believe it. Until next time, grace and peace and God bless.